My name is Nate Perez. The concept of generosity before my relationship with God was kind of weird. You know, I always saw my parents do it, and it was just something we kind of grow up in at church, but never really understood the biblical principles of it. And I just remember as a kid just getting $1 from my parents so that I could participate as well. But I really never fully understood why we were giving to the church. Yeah, I think tithing became a priority for me when I got a job. I mean, because, you know, I just wasn't sure how I was gonna be able to give and how I was gonna be able to tithe, but I always had that conviction that I should be giving to God. I really got to learn and receive as I started coming more into this church, as pastor would preach on giving and on tithing, is that I actually got to understand why we would give to the house and why we would give to the church. We not only get to really understand biblical principles, but we get to see the stories of life change that happen here as well. And when I finally got a job at Dutch Bros and I finally got that first paycheck, I don't think I've ever been so excited to give money away, you know, but I knew that it was going towards something that was gonna build the house, that it was gonna build the church. I remember one Sunday there was a specific sermon that Pastor Jared preached, and it was called, "If Not Now, When?" And he was specifically preaching about building the house of the church, of what we were gonna look like and of what we were gonna be able to do. And there was one moment in the sermon specifically where he called me out on stage.
This kid right here, stand up for a second. This one right here, this punk, okay? Came into my church 3 years ago. Didn't want to have anything to do with God, didn't want to have anything to do with church. He came to our church because he saw a cool Instagram post and he stuck with it. Not only did he give his life to Jesus here, he got called into ministry here. Last year, we hired him as our youth director and our e-groups director. Now he's serving God's calling on his life. That happened here in the house of God.
After he called me out on stage, and as the sermon was ending, I went to the back of the room and I just started to think about my life and how God has completely changed my life, not just on my own, but through this church. How I was able to meet my wife here at this church, how my family is able to come every single Sunday all the way from Tracy to serve here at this church as well. And I just started to look out and see all the faces and all the people, and I just started to think about all of the lives who were about to change as well. And I just knew God wanted me to give in that moment. And so I pray a quick prayer about a number that God was wanting me to give, and I felt like he had to put a number in my heart to be able to give right then and there. So I take my phone out, I type that number in, and it wasn't a huge number, but it was a bigger number for me, so it was a little scary. And as I type the number in, as I press send, I get a notification immediately that said insufficient funds. And so now I'm in a place where I'm asking God, why would you ask me to give something that I don't even have the money for? Like I don't have money to give for what you asked me to give. And it was in that moment that I started to think about my heart for this house, about how I just wanted to see life change in that moment so bad that I was willing to give everything I had. And I did end up checking my bank account after and seeing how much I did have in my account, and I ended up giving everything that was in there. But there was also a moment of panic. And I think in that moment of panic, I just was wondering how I was gonna pay for groceries, and I didn't wanna rely on asking people, my parents. And as I came into work that Monday, there ended up being a check right where I sit every single day and I get work done. And I was just able to see God's blessing because of the moment where I just said yes to God to be able to give in that moment. We see all throughout the Bible that the people of God give their first 10% of anything that they make to the house of God first. But also as well, I think the person next to you, to the right and to the left, they also need the blessing that you have as well. Not just financially, but their life could be changed as we further what this church does for the city, for our children, and for our families.